The last time I tried to cover Steven Crowder, I literally quit within a minute because just the shit that was coming out of his mouth was fucking stupid. Like, it was race baiting hard. Like, clearly you are insane and need to be G-checked on YouTube, but whatever, it's your opinion. You know, you're free to freedom of speech, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Steven Crowder says that Maxine Waters needs to be charged. Let's see what's going on here.
Set the stage a little bit here. Last night, or 2 nights ago, was this weekend, 60 Minutes, beacon of news.
Truth.
Obviously after.
Truth.
Beacon of true news. Authoritative.
Yeah.
After we saw what happened with DeSantis, they were, you know, basically when they did that, they didn't realize they were spreading their cheeks on live television. This is gonna hurt. They aired a documentary right now on far-right oath keepers. So this is what the left wants you to focus on. Here you go, just to set up this context.
Our guys are very experienced. We have active duty law enforcement in our organization that are helping to train us. We can blend in with our law enforcement. In fact, in a lot of cases, our training is much more advanced because of our military backgrounds. There's nothing I love more than my AR-15 and my chainsaw, and I don't know which one I like more.
That group he's speaking to, I think, has no black people in it. Am I right here? I see a couple tan people. Is that a black dude in the back? Is that a dude? Guy in a mask over here. Long white bearded trucker guy. Another long beard. Poor old white lady. Another white lady.
Arroyo invited us to a meeting to see for ourselves. The crowd, mostly retirees, meet twice a month.
Feel how warm that is?
To talk about how to survive disasters like forest fires.
These things are great.
Attacks on the power grid and civil war.
So that's why we talk about civil unrest, civil war. It's not a joke. This can happen, and we need to be ready for it.
I don't think they know, but they just inadvertently made the Oath Keepers seem entirely reasonable.
Yeah, that seems like my dad's friend.
Look, forest fires. Well, those have happened. California. Disasters. Well, we've had Hurricane Harvey. We've had disasters. Civil unrest. $2 billion in damages. Thousands of arrests. It's like, so it sounds to me like they're just saying, you know what, maybe keep your crap together. But they want you to fear the right-wing militia, right? They want you to fear the right-wing extremists. Meanwhile, this weekend, Portland has been burning down. Here's just a brief montage. Mostly peaceful.
These aren't even protests.
The building's mostly not on fire.
I would say it's mostly not peaceful. I hate you all.
I just like, how do you let them get that much laneage?
I know.
I know that's not a word, but just, just like put a push bumper on your cop car. Something. Do something at that point. You know what they're going to do. They're going to burn stuff down. And here's something else, too. I want to be clear about something. Back the blue. Look, I think that conservatives need to acknowledge, we've been talking about this, and sometimes people get mad when you say, look, not all police officers are corruption-free. We know this, particularly when you look at their support and they're unwilling to address the actual extremists who are burning towns down. So this weekend there was a guy named Larry McFarland, okay? He fired his shotgun into the sky. So he took out a shotgun, pointed at the crowd of people.
President's advice.
Fired it into the sky. Yeah, Joe Biden's advice, except it was supposed to be on your porch.
Oh, right.
And then your dog bites you. Yeah. You not like that gunshot? Major!
And then you.
There's just so much. There's so much to unpack with the way they talk, with the way they're just all buddy and like, right wings are not violent, whatever. While he wears a literal fight like hell gun straps. I'm a big white. I'm a man. I show my masculinity by being stronger than everybody else. And I'm like, the substance of which he speaks is just. Like, yeah, I can make anything look bad, and I think John Oliver already did this bit, but I can make anything look bad if I compare, like, people just sitting there talking with, like, a random fire in a place. Like,
fall up the stairs and shit your pants.
Simultaneously.
And then Jill turns on the microwave and you forget where you are for a few seconds. Just that plate right here because just my hair ain't going to look right. And then the media referred to the rioters as anti-police protesters in that story. He was arrested, charged with unlawful use of a weapon. If you want to talk about violence in the streets, and I'm telling you, everyone be ready. Be ready to protect your family. I'm not talking about going out and waging any violence yourself, but be ready to protect your house and home. Because
okay. That's the first dog whistle. I'm not telling you to go out and incite violence. I'm telling you that violence will come to you and be ready to protect yourself. Therefore, if you think, like, if you put enough people on edge by saying violence is coming, violence is coming, violence is coming, then when violence even begins to look like it's coming, you will overreact because you've heard this so many times. I'm not going to let them burn down my house, when it could just be like fucking group of carolers going around saying, black people matter, we should love our neighbor. Like, I don't like Steven Crowder. I don't like Steven Crowder. I don't like his smugness. I know how he's phrasing it. I know he's doing it in a specific way where I'm supposed to agree with it because the evidence is just directly in front of my face and I'm like willingly ignoring it because of the way he's like, but like, oh, he made them look based. They talk about forest fires, they talk about natural disasters, and they talk about civil war. Like, fuck you, bro. Like, no.
Because Maxine Waters and the left, they have been actively encouraging violence. I don't mean in veiled terms.
Yeah.
I mean in blatant terms. This happened this week, and Maxine Waters in Minnesota talking about what protesters should do. This is what you need to be ready for. They're trying to intimidate the jury. This is clip C.
Fight for justice, but I am very hopeful, and I hope that we're going to get a verdict that will say guilty, guilty, guilty. And if we don't, we cannot go away.
And not just manslaughter, right? I mean...
Oh, no, not manslaughter. No. This is guilty for murder. I don't know whether it's in the first degree, but as far as I'm concerned, it's first degree murder.
Congresswoman, what happens if we do not get what you just told? What should the people do? What should protesters on the street do?
I didn't hear you.
What happens?
What should protesters do?
Write their local representative.
Well, we got to stay on the street, and we've got to get more active. We've got to get more confrontational. We've got to make sure that they know that we mean business.
And by the way, only...
That's not inciting violence. This is easy. Now, again, I'm not going to excuse her remarks on the basis of I understand how, like, the dynamics of certain extremists on both sides, and that's fair to say, like, niggas have been wilding for a little bit. Like, people have been wilding. Like, there are, you know, when we had the thing in the Bronx, even though there was neighborhood cleanup, whatever, like, don't attack your own neighborhoods, blah, blah, blah. I can vibe with that as a statement just because I can see the bigger picture and say, well, go after the government buildings or go after like Walmarts and Targets and etc. Like, if you're going to do that, I'm not going to excuse the, like, we're not going to go into the whole, like, are riots excusable, are riots not, blah, 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 because literally the LA riots, we wouldn't have civil rights without the riots. Like, there's plenty of situations in which, yo, we're going to wild out if you don't do the right thing. Like, if the system fails, that means that, like, it's open season, and if the system don't work for us, then why should we abide by the system? Fair enough. There's no call to violence. There's no go out and shoot people. And he posted that clip in his video, stupid enough not to include, like, actual calls to violence, but she's basically saying we need to stay on the streets, protest harder, blocking streets. We're talking, like, disrupting the system. But, like, civil disobedience and sit-downs and all that and everything are all in that vein. There's no call to violence there. So I'm going to watch him, and I promise you, I'm going to predict this. I'm going to watch him say the assumed meaning and skip any type of positive that's within there to paint his picture even, like, wider.
A couple hours later, there was a drive-by shooting in Minnesota on National Guard police. Here you go. Here's a quick clip.
Well, National Guard troops providing security for residents in the area of Penn Avenue and Broadway in Minneapolis this morning were shot at 4:19 a.m.
Looks like a dead
The guard
Raggedy
says
Ann
the
doll.
gunshots came from a white SUV towards a Minnesota National Guard and Minneapolis
Well, her house
police
is on
team
fire. How would
providing
you
neighborhood
look?
security in that area. The two National Guard troops suffered minor injuries. One National Guard member had to go to a hospital for treatment of lacerations from shattered glass.
And final thing I want to show before we...
So what does that have to do with Black Lives Matter? What does that have to do with protesters? Like, I don't think you realize this, but white people also don't like the militarization of cities. Like, there was a whole... remember when, like, the white people started, like, creating the walls and the wall of moms or whatever, and people were like, shouldn't have went to the protest, shouldn't have done that. See, it's not the protest that they're mad at. It's the fact that black people are asking for a little bit more out of society, and they don't want that. He's proving right now that he, like, aligns with the white supremacy ideal, or at the least doesn't want actual change to come about in the system. He's not a two sides party. He's just straight right wing. He's straight alt right wing. He's trying to be a leader to white people. Like, that's how this is framing. If I were to watch this without a bias, I couldn't see him making those points. That's what I hate about ingesting so much of this content, and why people think I'm some like type of left-wing shill of some kind. That is my first impression. Like, I'm watching what you're saying and putting it into pieces. Okay, you think that Maxine Waters called for violence. That means that effectively you think Martin Luther King was calling for violence. But his memory and his wants and wishes have been whitewashed, so you probably don't include him in that. So anybody who says you gotta get up there, you gotta get out there, you need to be active, protest, you need to be making the calls, you need to be sitting in front of shops saying black people matter. Like, you drill it into people's heads. There's a problem, and we all need to fight on the same page here. You're telling me that's wrong. But he was one of the people who was like, yeah, it's gonna be rowdy. Can't wait for January 6th. See what I mean? It's not that I view him in my left-wing, like, shell. It's that I'm literally watching him explain right-wing talking points as though they're not.
Before we go here to the closing arguments and then cover it live, this is not the first time. Look, if Donald Trump was kicked off of all big tech platforms.
You heard it. The same thing Candace Owens said, right? If Donald Trump was kicked off of social media, he was still the president. Social media does not matter. Why are y'all so obsessed with being on these platforms? You get cable news, you get newspaper articles, you get consistent 24/7 coverage. Trump wasn't on Twitter for he hasn't been on Twitter since that day, since that era in time, and people still spread his message through social media. His sons are still there. His supporters are still there. So he didn't get canceled or taken off of social media. Yeah, he can't say anything. He was banned, but other people do it for him. So it don't matter.
Some people try to say that he incited violence. Maxine Waters needs to be federally charged and impeached. Because this is not the first time that this has happened.
But okay, that's number 2. Watch this. I'm going to show y'all this, and it's going to blow your mind. You probably smart enough to figure this out, but for the chuds who are not smart enough to figure this out, this is what we call a straw man argument. And the easiest way to defeat that is to quite literally take his words. If Donald Trump was removed off of social media platforms for inciting violence, all that and whatever, Maxine Waters needs to be charged federally with inciting violence and impeached. Donald Trump was charged with inciting violence and was impeached and still got acquitted. So either he was wrong to be acquitted because he did the same thing Maxine Waters did and nobody condemned it the same way nobody condemned it the same way they condemned Donald Trump, or Donald Trump didn't incite violence and Maxine Waters isn't inciting violence if you're comparing the two. How can you hold both these positions in one sentence? You can't say one thing is bad and one thing is good, but then be on the side of the bad thing and say, well, if that was bad, then this should also be bad. Because you literally excused in the same sentence, well, he didn't incite violence. He told people to march peacefully, and they said it was inciting violence. She's telling people to do that, and that's actually inciting violence. So where's her mark down? They both are free. He want to run for president again. If you have the ability to do something so heinous that people hate it all across the board, and the only way we could punish you is by voting you out, then you received no punishment. He's not banned from speaking on cable news. You saw in the recommendations. Oh, sorry. You saw in the recommendations. What's the first thing? What's the first thing, guys? Trump on Fox News. He looked horrible, but Trump on Fox News. So where's the silence? Where's the silence? That video has 2.2 million views, probably got reposted on a bunch of right-wing websites, probably totaling up to 60, 70 million views with the way they share shit. Where's the silence? Where is the silence? Where was he silenced? Show me. Show me. But nobody could ever show me. So either he's doing this on purpose because he's bullshit, or he genuinely believes this, which makes him a fucking idiot. and bullshitting. So if I were to have watched him, and let's say I'm a huge Steven Crowder fan, I love it. How could I warp what he's saying to make sense to my right-wing ideology unless I was just full-blown into it already? That's why I say I'm not here to convince you that what you're watching right now or what these people are saying is absolute lies, because you're already on either side of it. If I approached it from a neutral standpoint, it doesn't make sense to me. Therefore, I have to say he's either saying this to create an effect of fear-mongering, or he's genuinely an idiot who has warped his worldview to think that saying stuff like this and reaching these conclusions is okay. That doesn't make any sense to me. That's not possible. Because if that were possible, then I'd have to assume that, like, everything they've said is correct thus far, and therefore there is no issue because they're still having the ability to create the narrative with, he's got what, 922K subscribers on this channel. I know on his main channel he's got like a bunch more, blah, blah, blah. Like, ain't no way, right? Ain't no way that like you aren't creating your own narrative here. Which is why I appreciate Republicans, because even as stupid as they can be, at least they stay on the same track out every single time. It could be the dumbest thing. Oh, Ben & Jerry's is too political. I just want ice cream. At least they all say that. Like, at least they're not jumping from point to point saying random shit. They do it, but they stay on the topic.
And here's just a few of her greatest hits, Clippy.
The people are going to
montage.
turn on them. They're going to protest. They're going to absolutely harass them until they decide that they're going to tell the president, no, I can't hang with you.
Harass them, she said.
I will go and take Trump out tonight.
Oh, that's
to a nice dinner.
Nice.
We have protesters taking up at their house who's saying no peace, no sleep. You see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd.
I'd never heard that part. He shouldn't have put that in the video. Oh my God, I've never heard that part. You see anybody from Trump's cabinet. They weren't talking about random MAGA people ever. That quote has been misinterpreted so many times, and I've only heard the other part where it's like, if you see a Trump supporter, go and harass them in a restaurant or whatever. She specifically said, if you see anybody from the cabinet, from Trump's personal team, you let them know that he's fucked up. Wow, y'all really full of shit.
Who's saying no peace, no sleep. You see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant.
That sounds familiar. You're not. Your kind's not welcome around here.
Oh,
Yeah. Your kind's not welcome around here. I hate that. Saying black people aren't allowed in a restaurant eliminates the idea of I could agree with you politically. I could agree with everything on your lifestyle, your ideologies, everything. You still won't accept me because of my skin color. If I can't change your mind into thinking that Trump is an absolute fascist, then I don't want you in my circle. That's not the same thing. I told you that was bullshit. And I can't believe I made it through a Crowder video. But wow, you are an insanely weak human being. You are an insanely weak man. And the fact that you got a bunch of white boys in the crowd, wow.
And people wonder why Gina Carano compared the saying, hey, look, she didn't compare being Republican to being a Jew in the Holocaust. Nope. She said, how did it start? They got their fellow citizens to tell on them, to snitch on them, to round them up for the government. That's what she was talking about.
Ironically, the government was in support of the ideal, so it doesn't matter if Gina Carano was supporting that or not. It still didn't make sense, therefore it was fear-mongering, which is why she got fired. See, I covered that already. You can go watch that on the YouTube. Hit the links down below. It's in there, the YouTube. Hit the YouTube. I already covered that. I was right. I was right.
Now, if Donald Trump gets in trouble for saying fight like hell and then telling them to protest peacefully, keep in mind, too, when Donald Trump said that was a group of hundreds of thousands of people. There had never been a massive, violent, right-wing protest. It didn't exist. Yeah.
What the fuck was Charlottesville? What the fuck was ramming a Biden bus off the, like, surrounding a Biden bus and, like, cornering it? What the fuck was ramming protesters?
Maxine Waters was amidst the city's burning and said, more confrontational. Yep. Tell them they're not welcome. This was after billions of dollars in damages and dozens of people killed and hundreds of officer casualties. Maxine Waters has seen the violence, has seen the carnage, and has encouraged it. And even worse, none of the other Democrats have said anything. They've all fallen silent because they want this jury right now to convict. They are trying to, wherever you line up, what we do have to agree upon is in this justice system, you cannot have coercion.
Wherever you line up. So he's lining you up for a thought where the thought, okay, I wonder how I have to explain this. This is my closing thought here. This is my closing thought here. I want to line this up perfectly so everybody understands it. What you just heard is known, okay, I don't have the name of it off the top of my head. You can Google it if you want. But I'm setting up the premise of this argument so you couldn't disagree with me unless you were nuts. Does that make sense? It's like forcing, there's a word specific, there's a term specifically for it, but it's forcing the argument to land right where you need it to be, even though what you have said thus far does not line up with your concluding argument or your main thesis. So if I were to tell you, no matter where you fall on the spectrum, you should believe that every human should have human rights. If you were to say no to that, that obviously would paint you in a specific picture of like, well, who do you think shouldn't have rights? What are you assuming here? Who shouldn't have what? Like, how should this go? Now, obviously, on a certain turn point, there are certain ultimatums. That's not the one I'm looking for, though. That is an ultimatum argument, but there's a specific term for how that works. In that ultimatum, obviously, you would say, yeah, of course I think all humans should have human rights. But if you say, but I think white people should just, be at the top of the food chain because we created most of the modern world, blah, 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 you'd be like, well, you're a little bit crazy. What he just did is said, oh, no matter if you believe that this is not or not, I'm going to create this fallacy argument that you have to agree with. And if you agree with that, then you probably agree with everything I just said beforehand. So if you don't, you're nuts. Except the fallacy is that your conclusion does not line up with the supporting argument you've put together with it. It's not a blanket statement that everybody could agree with without background knowledge. Because it's easy for me to say every human should have human rights because we all agree. If that were not the case, then obviously we're at a difference of opinion on how the world should work. That's a blanket statement that can be eaten into sections. This one is a blanket statement that doesn't work with what he just said previously. The jury cannot have coercion, as if the jury did not see the video and come to their own conclusion. That's the problem. It's not about politics. It's not. It's about black people having rights to not be killed by police. That's it. Y'all made it political because you took a political stance on, I support law enforcement because they continuously perpetuate the systemic oppression of minorities in certain groups by jailing them for certain offenses more, by having more heavily policed communities. Therefore, the type of infractions that they could catch you for if they've got to meet a quota ranks up. Those type of infractions hurt my job opportunities, hurt my future expectations on certain other things, could hurt my family. I might have to pay legal fees that I can't afford, which puts me in a perpetual cycle of poverty. That poverty leads me to have to live in a certain house. I can't escape that house, so I can't create equity by owning a home or buying a car or some type of appreciable asset. I can't do X, Y, and Z because I've already been harassed by the cops. I have a certain fear of going into certain neighborhoods because there's more police there, and they're always looking for somebody that fits the description. And if they harass me and I decide to say I didn't do anything, they could end up shooting me or beating me or whatever. So I'm going to keep quiet and I'm not going to be an activist. I'm not going to be part of the discussion on what things to do because I live in fear. Ignoring all of that to say the jury shouldn't have any type of coercion. The jury's not worried about what decision comes out and what happens afterwards because we already had it happen. We've already had juries acquit people that led to riots. I'm not threatening you and saying, well, if you don't pick the right verdict, we're gonna burn down the city. What I'm telling you is if the verdict comes out not guilty, people are gonna be angry. Like, if they decide to go out and be like, fuck the system, we're burning all this shit down, that's a result of the literal centuries of this happening. That's it. It's not coercion. That's just reality. What did you want them to say? If the verdict comes out not guilty, don't do anything. That's just how the system works. Give up hope. Fuck it. He had the nerve to say in the middle of that video, oh, you should write your local representatives. As if the whole reason the system isn't changing is because the local representatives, the state, the federal, the whole system is like clearly banging the hammer down on minorities. That's how we got here. Come on. Steven Crowder's a fucking tool. He gets the Donkey of the Day award.